Saul Klein, it's a pleasure to have you with us here at the London Business School, and we've been following over the years the kind of impact that you and your organizations have had over the venture scene. I was wondering if you can share with us, I know that you have a very particular thesis on the value of London and kind of the broader geography we are based on as kind of the new source of entrepreneurialism. Can you share your thesis with us?
Sure, and again, thanks for having me and great to be here. So I think in our business, we talk about it's taken 20 years to get to the starting line, and it's the next 20 years that are interesting. And what we mean by that is any successful innovation cluster or ecosystem takes time to build. So arguably Silicon Valley has been building since 1971 and the birth of the semiconductors, so over 50 years, and this ecosystem is probably only really 20 years old. But we're at a point now in this ecosystem where there are hundreds of billion-dollar companies, unicorns that have been born in the UK, or more broadly, we call the 5-hour train ride from King's Cross, New Palo Alto. And so the amount of venture capital, the amount of billion-dollar companies, the richness of the talent and the IP is such that, we believe that this ecosystem is really, set for great things in the next 20 years. And the key difference, we think, is that if Silicon Valley really was a source of incredible innovation that created enormous economic value, we think New Palo Alto, will not just be the next Palo Alto, but a different one. And the difference in our view is innovation based on values, where impact, both social and economic, are sort of fundamental to the growth of the ecosystem rather than just economic output.
So this is fascinating and very inspiring. I know that if we look at kind of what London in particular has been known for over the last decade, on the venture side, quite a few things. Fintech stands as a major growth engine, and I know that you've had a chance to touch a few of those. If I take that lens of looking 20 years out and having this dual values and return logic, what are some of the sectors that I think are ripe for growth going forward?
Well, look, arguably Fintech can be a values-driven sector. Fintech doesn't have to be a sector that is just about profit optimization. So you can argue, not even argue, if you look at the billions of pounds that Wise has saved people in FX transaction fees, if you look at the quality of service that a Monzo offers or a Tide offers to small businesses, broadening access to sophisticated financial services, is a major leveler within society. So I think, we don't maybe give fintechs enough credit for the value that they're creating, not just the economic value we're creating. But I think, if you look out over the next few decades, the areas where I think both the UK and London have really placed their bets, obviously AI. We have DeepMind, which is not even any more arguably the world's greatest AI company. Google in Mountain View said, DeepMind's so good, they can run our global AI from London. So that's a pretty big deal. Obviously, we have incredible opportunities around healthcare. There are major companies in the UK that are, at the AstraZenecas and the GSKs, but there is a whole wave of biotech companies, Oxford Nanopore being one of them, that are sort of coming through and, taking this new era of genomics and computational biology, which is going to be incredibly impactful. But, I think in many of these fields of new technology, particularly AI and what's known as engineering biology, the UK is incredibly strong. And that builds on what is already a very strong ecosystem. It's really after the Bay Area, now that China is, sort of in a sense moving backwards from a innovation perspective, at least globally, not so much domestically. This is, after the Bay Area, the best place in the world to create companies and to invest if you're interested in innovation.
That's fascinating, and I think the kind of relative incline of the new Palo Alto, as you call it, within the global venture scene is something to pay attention to. We talked about on the venture side. I'm curious to hear on the talent side, and I know that one of the things that you care greatly about is also to make sure that we both nurture the size and diversity of the talent thing. Can you tell us what are the changes that you see from maybe 10 years ago, and where are some of the exciting trends that you see going forward?
Look, I can tell you the change I see from 20 years ago, because I'm that old. But 20 years ago when I was at Skype, we had about 30 people, and we went from 30 to 500 people in a year. And the addressable talent pool of people you could hire to work in that kind of business who could run that fast, maybe there were 500-600 people in Europe who had that kind of experience. Even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you look at just the UK, there are 2.3 million people working in tech. And there are probably like 150,000 people who've worked at a unicorn. So, the kind of talent pool that one can draw on in terms of having experience of building those types of high growth, science-based, technology-based companies has just changed radically in the last decade. On the diversity point, we're still way behind. As you know, because it's a partnership we have with London Business School, particularly in the investor area, we've co-created the Newton Venture Program, that aspires for 50% of all cohorts to be female underrepresented, and we've achieved that in all of the early cohorts, which means hopefully 5-10 years from now, we're going to have much more diverse investors. I think diverse investors attract more diverse founders attract more diverse teams. But, we need to be honest, and we're still pretty bad, not just here, but globally when it comes to tech and diversity.
And I guess this is a call for action. If I just move from kind of resources and talent to the other R, regulation, or just the role of the government in actually sponsoring and facilitating a lot of that. I know that one of the points people make is in the US, a lot of what we see is made feasible by the accommodating regulatory and kind of overall approach to thinking about that. Where do you see the opportunities or the needs that we need for the new Palo Alto to kind of realize its potential?
Well, look, I outside of my day job, wear two government hats. One is I'm on the Prime Minister's Council for Science and Technology and have been for 4 years. And then I've, in the last year, become a non-exec at the new Department for Science, Innovation and Technology, DSIT. So on one level, you could say, I'm just going to say the UK is a great environment for all of this. But one thing that the UK has done that no G7 economy has done is that we've published openly, it's about a year old now, the UK Science and Technology Framework. It's 18 pages long, so VCs with ADHD can read it and absorb it. And what it does is it sort of lays out a 7-year framework with all of the different pillars that support a sort of a world-leading science and technology economy, starting from picking the 5 key technologies, one being AI, second being engineering, biology, but then, looks at talent, looks at infrastructure, looks at procurement, but also looks at policy and regulation. And the reality is, now that science and technology is so ubiquitous in society, no tech company doesn't want to be regulated. I mean, you see Mark Zuckerberg going to Congress and saying, regulate me. And actually, so what we have in the UK, and maybe it's the only dividend post-Brexit that we really have, is the ability to actually have a pro-innovation regulatory environment. And that's why you see people like Andreessen Horowitz bringing that crypto fund to the UK. That's why you see, the UK creating the world's first AI Safety Institute, because we have the ability to actually be really progressive when it comes to policy and regulation. So I actually think, again, the UK is an extremely strong place. People trust the governance, they trust the legal system. The US is bit of a Wild West, and it works really well if you're on the right side of it, and you have like the regulatory capture that Silicon Valley has. But I think, you know, a more grown-up version of tech and policy is the kind of conversations we have here, rather than the sort of the very adversarial nature of the conversation in the US.
Excellent, and this is such an interesting way of seeing how regulation facilitates a lot of the innovation that's coming up. And I want to thank you now for your time. This has been brilliant getting insights from you, and I strongly encourage people to take a look at the report. It's a comprehensive and really state-of-the-art document.
And short.
And short. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Gary.